I want to welcome everyone and give a Assalamu alaikum to everyone as well. Online as so I'm one of the co-curators of this exhibition called Halal Metropolis. To us, the Halal Metropolis alludes to the established and growing Muslim population that's here in Detroit and its metro area. And it's one of the largest and most diverse Muslim populations in the nation. However, you might say their visibility is really pronounced and extremely present in the city, as we all might know, but the narrative of the Muslim population is, unusually silent. And this exhibition is a way to sort of fill in that gap, to make us realize the Muslim population is very much part of the Detroit story. And so if you haven't had a chance, we'd love for you afterwards to take a look at the exhibition. There's more historical section that's in the room next to us, and downstairs a lot of the artists' work can be seen as well. Before I begin, I just want to thank a few people, starting with the Scarab Club itself, and then Trina and Christopher for being such gracious and supportive hosts, and really allowing us to present Halal Metropolis here in Detroit. I also want to thank some of our sponsors, which include the Knight Foundation, the Doris Duke Foundation, the El Hibri Foundation, and the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Arts. So before we begin and talk to... Not loud enough? Okay, sorry about that. I want to welcome our three guests, and before we get started, I'll do some kind of CV introduction stuff, everyone, and then we'll take it from there. Our first guest here is Mary B-Girl Mama Mar. Mary Mar, better known as B-Girl Mama, is a unique and a hardcore performer who happens to be a Khmer Muslim B-Girl. She is part of Hardcore Detroit and Venus Fly dance crews and the dance duo Mama Squared. Mary started her journey in hip-hop culture when she started breaking in 2001. Since then, she has performed, judged, and competed throughout the United States and Canada, as well as toured throughout the US and Malaysia. Mary debuted as a singer and songwriter with her first single, Breathe, whose video you can see downstairs, just this past November. She hopes to continue her journey as a performing artist while staying true to herself as a Khmer Muslim B-Girl. Mary also manages and performs at an art studio just north of Detroit and hosts free open session practice spots in Detroit, empowering youth and adults of all ages through hip-hop, dance, and culture. Welcome, Mary. Our next guest is Parisa Gaderi. Parisa is a visual artist, curator, and filmmaker who earned her BA in Visual Communications from Art and Architecture University in Tehran, and her MFA in Art and Design from the University of Michigan in 2014. She moved to the US in 2009. Her work has been exhibited nationally and internationally, including South Asian Women's Collective, the 6th International Media Arts Award, the Experiment Bio in Spain, a Women's House or Roaming House at Air Gallery, New York, at the Fajr International Visual Arts Festival in Tehran, at the Red Bull House of Art here in Detroit, Michigan. Her work has been featured in the Huffington Post, the Brooklyn Rail, Video Focus out of France, 1969, at the University of California, Berkeley, at the Michigan Daily, Unite Women, and the Visual Art Beat magazine, among others. Gaderi has made 4 short films: Still, Broken Glass, The Ones Who Love Me Are Gone, and One Way. Her short film Still has been screened at the Women's Independent Film Festival in Santa Monica, the International Film Festival for Documentary Short and Comedy in Indonesia, and CineWest in Sydney, Australia. Still won the International Award of Merits winner from the International Film Festival for Documentary Short and Comedy in Indonesia. Broken Glass was screened at Ladies' First International Film Festival in Cork, Ireland, and The One Who Loves Me Are Gone was a winner of the Berlin Flash Film Festival in Berlin, Germany. She is currently an assistant professor of graphic design at the Department of Art, Art History, and Design at Michigan State University. Welcome, Parisa. And our final speaker for tonight is Anthony Keith Giannini, who lives and works in Birmingham, Michigan, and the Bronx, New York. He received an MFA from the Rhode Island School of Design in 2012. His work has been exhibited at Elizabeth D. Gallery, at the Pace Gallery in New York, the Sculpture Center in Queens, at 532 Gallery Thomas in Thomas Jekyll in Central Park. At the 532 Gallery Thomas Jekyll, Central Park Gallery in Los Angeles, the Harmony Murphy Gallery in LA as well, Diane Rothstein Gallery, Oliver Francis Gallery in Texas, and the Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit right here as well as Indus Detroit, Gallery Christian Hosp in Berlin, and Beers London in London. His work has recently included into the group exhibition Chains at Central Park Gallery in LA. In November of 2021, Giannini will be included in a group exhibition curated by Anne-Laurie Lemaitre at Cap in New York City. Giannini was awarded the Malcolm Johnson Fellowship from the Rhode Island Foundation and has received grants and fellowships through the Joan Mitchell Foundation and the Roger and Gail Mandel Foundation. His work has been featured in New American Paintings, Art Forum, the New York Times, Art in America, International Review, Artillery Magazine, Political Concept, A Critical Lexicon, Arts and Cultural Magazine in Texas, as well as many others. Welcome, Anthony. So that was the boring stuff. Gotta get out of it just to prove how accomplished artists are here. But I thought I'd start with a kind of very broad kind of question, which is more like, what motivated for you guys to become artists and inspire your practice? But in particular, maybe you could talk about some of the inspirations behind the works that we see downstairs.
Hello everyone, everybody knows me as Big Girl Mama. Mary is my name, and my work downstairs in particular is my music video called Breathe. In the music video, I really, the lotus flower was an inspiration for me because in the Cambodian culture, the lotus flower is very important as it represents resilience and strength. And also with the lotus flower, when it goes through, it goes in the muddy water, but it just never gets dirty, which is just really, really cool because it just stays clean no matter what environment that it is in. It stays really clean. In the music video, I'm in the freight elevator and there's lotus flowers all around me, and I just wanted to represent that you can be strong and be beautiful and be yourself in any situation that you could come across. And then also as an artist in general, I always love dancing and singing. My family inspired me. My husband inspires me. And then also for me, growing up as a child, I loved watching Janet Jackson and Paula Abdul. When they were dancing on stage and singing, I was just like, that looks so amazing. And I always wanted to dance and sing on stage. And when I was growing up, I was in show choir for like 9 years. And I loved it. So on stage, I just feel like I could just be myself and share myself to the world. And I love this. I get to choose like what I want to share and who I want to be on stage, and that's what really excites me. And to share myself and my stories with the world is just pretty amazing to me. So, and then going back to the music video, sorry, I'm going boop, 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 back and forth. With the music video Breathe, it really is finding your passion and what makes you become alive. What makes you want to live and breathe in this world? And once you find that passion, what makes you feel electrifying? So that was part of the reason why I wrote the song and I produced the music and everything like that. I want everybody to feel good. And once they find what they love and what they have passion in their life, I want them to go for it, just like hopefully I'm doing right now, because it's really scary to put myself out there. So yeah, thank you.
Hello everyone. Can you all hear me? No? Should I speak louder? Okay, hi. Thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. So my inspiration for becoming an artist is my aunt because she was the only artist in the whole family. Everyone was studying, were like studying engineering and all the math and everything, and I hated it. So, and seeing her work and how she was a textile designer, so I thought that, oh, that could also be an option for me, which I had to fight my family a lot, and but I won. And I studied graphic design for my undergrad, and then I continued to enjoy being an artist and making art. And the piece that I have in this exhibition is called The Impossible Room, and there are two segments to it. It's a performance piece, and the inspiration behind the work is that I saw a photo of my friend on Instagram that he and his wife was standing on one side and his family on the other side of a thick black line. And I texted him, I was like, where is this place? Why can't you be in the same side? And he said that this is a Haskell Free Library at the border of Vermont and Quebec in Canada, and he said that this is a meeting place for people who cannot cross border. And because the Iran-US situation, socio-political situation has been very hostile after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, so there's been so many complications for students' visa. That's why Iranian students can't go back and forth and to be with their families when there are like eventful situations or critical situations like sickness and death. So I was impacted by the same visa restrictions. So I felt for him, and I just wanted to do something. And I was always seeing it in performance because I was fascinated by how bodies move and how bodies mark their space. And I thought that this should be in a performance. So it took me about 2 years because of the funding and doing all the research. It was a very heavily research project, and I learned a lot about all other immigrant situations and all these border crossings and how it's difficult for other nationalities. Like I know that in the South, we also face the same situation. I watched a lot of documentaries and performance pieces. So it's about borders. So, yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I don't think I initially set out to be an artist, but the things that I was interested in as a child, and let me get my glasses on, everything's blurry. I was really interested in comics and music growing up all the way up to college, and my family was very involved with music, but not on like a professional level. It was just sort of like a family thing. And same with art too. My grandmother was first generation Italian in Detroit. They moved here from Italy, and they couldn't afford education, but she was a homemaker, but she had a studio in her basement where she would she would paint ceramics of Christian figures and Mother, the Mary and Jesus. And so that was like my upbringing. I was surrounded by that. I'd go into the basement to get, I'm trailing off, I'm sorry, but just these memories of being in a studio and sort of navigating that space that was special to her made a huge impact. And that's how I felt when I was a little kid. And that's how I felt about comics. This was this like medium where I could sort of suspend disbelief and, frame by frame construct narrative. You're using your own internal voice for the characters, and it just becomes this other world. And then also with music, later in life, as a teen, being in like garage rock bands in the 90s and stuff, I was surrounded by communities, which is really similar to how I think the art world works too. Is you have these communities that are so potent, and going to see a friend's show live is like almost like a studio visit in a sense, where you see this raw material being formed and manipulated and with music, I think comics and music, looking back, like that's a lot of how I approach, excuse me, the formal qualities in my work. There's some pieces downstairs where, there's cells, what I consider cells of imagery, almost in some sort of narrative fashion, but there's a lot of play and there's a lot of chance. And so with music, there's improvisation, and you're putting notes together to create some sort of structure that comes together as groupings. And so with images, I kind of treat it the same way. There's always this trial and error. I just found the two to the things I started off with and where I'm at now, they're definitely connected in that, the fabric of how I make the work. And I think maybe the formal qualities and sort of how you get lost. You get lost in music, and you get lost in composition, and you get lost in painting, and you get just lost in the process. And I think that's sort of where the magic happens. It pushes you back, yourself, and you kind of you get embedded in the work. But the work downstairs is inspired by. I'm pulling a lot from a lot of different types of archives, family archives, images that I've just grown up with, imagery that I've collected over the years, and brought, I lived abroad for a while in grad school, and I have a collection of images that I kind of constantly pull from, and also daily clippings and newspaper articles, and screenshotting in the last probably 7 years, more so screenshotting now on digital platforms, and letting those sort of all create this, pushing them up against one another, butting the images up against one another, and creating this tension. And I think in the work downstairs, I'm really trying to focus on body language and the idea of haptics and proxemics, sort of like with groupings of people in a space, and what does that environment create, the tension. Sometimes it's ugly and sometimes it's beautiful. And sometimes it's slowed down and really fast. And I think that's kind of what those works downstairs, it was at the end of 2019, right before the lockdown. That was actually like the last group of paintings that I made, and I've taken like a year off completely from working to decompress, because it's just felt like an intense 10 years post-grad school, and sort of trying to get back to some of the basics of why I even started off doing this, and where it can go outside of any kind of market or gallery. That stuff tends to dilute, the process sometimes, so, or muddy it. But yeah, I think that answers my perspective.
I'll follow up on the body in a bit, but before that, I'm just curious, as artists from really varying Muslim traditions, and actually I should speak in as artists from varying Muslim traditions, and also traditions that are not the typical associations. We have, converts, Iranian. This is not what we think of when we think of the Detroit Muslim scene. You think more Arab, maybe South Asian, Bangladeshi, maybe African American, and you three actually represent a whole different group, but that's also very present. But even thinking through that, I'm just kind of, how do you consider your artwork in kind of respect to Muslimness? And I'm wondering if you feel there are certain expectations, and this is typically from a white-centric art world, to make certain types of work with certain aesthetics, and then also that pressure is also from a Muslim-centric world, right? Where you guys probably don't, I'm curious how you guys think about your own aesthetics, the expressions, when there's these two pressures that are quite distinct at times, demanding different things.
So for me, I converted back reverted back in 2006. I am the only Muslim in my family. The rest of my family, they are Buddhist or Catholic or Christian. For me, it's like I have to really juggle between who am I, what my identity. One part I am Khmer. My family they fled Cambodia from the Khmer Rouge, and that's why they're here. I was born here in Detroit. I learned a lot about my culture and who I am from my parents, from my families. And then I was searching for myself, and I fell in love with Islam and converted in 2006. And I'm like, okay, I'm Muslim, but I've always been dancing. I had to go through some type of struggle with that because, like, is it okay for me to sing and dance? Like, is that not modest? Like that, I had to struggle with that a little bit. And then, and here I am, like, I am a B-girl. You know, I love hip hop. I fell in love with hip hop in 2001. I started breaking in 2001, St. Andrews, never forget. Started there after I saw two girls stretching on the floor. I was like, is this your breakdancing gang? Like, excuse me, it's not called breakdancing, it's called breaking or b-boying. It's not called a game, it's called a crew. But that night, I started and never stopped, never looked back. It's been 20 years, and I love it. So all of that, it's like, sometimes I get confused, like, it's like, okay, so I'm Cambodian, I'm Muslim, and I'm a B-girl, but that's all who I am, though. You know, that's who I am. And I have a lot more hats. I'm a dance teacher, I'm a studio manager. At the studio, I'm the costume manager, I'm the stage manager. It's just, I'm a person, and I just choose to follow the Islam faith. And I am Cambodian, and I know what my cultures are. You know, when I do Buddhist ceremonies, I sit out because I'm Muslim. And then also, like with my family, it was not easy at all. It was just like, you know, am I abandoning who I am? No, this is who I am. I'm not abandoning anybody. I'm not abandoning myself especially. And I just came to a realization with the dancing part. I just really feel as though dancing and singing, this is what he gave me as gifts, and I want to share it. And it is how I choose to share my gifts with the people. Like how am I dancing? I feel like I'm exercising, expressing myself, being strong, being a good role model for kids, because I don't dance in that, you know, sexy way. You know, I keep it very strong and positive when I dance. I keep it very strong and positive when I sing. I want to inspire people and motivate people. And it doesn't matter, like, the whole, like, you know, look, we said with the whiteness, it's like, I'm hoping that they're able to keep their open mind and their open eyes to learn about other cultures and religions and everything like that, you know? The only thing I hope that everybody expects from me is to be myself, you know? And that's it. Like, I'm Mary Mar. I'm a Cambodian Muslim B-girl. You know, you take it or leave it. If you don't like it, there's the door. Like, seriously, I'm like, we only could be who we are and to be the best that we could be, you know? And then with the Islam, it's, you know, people, you know, with the whole dancing thing is like, it's like, you know what, you know, we learn as Muslims that there's only one judge. There's only one creator. So it's only him that matters. Like right now, it's like none of what you guys think matters in all. So that's how I just go through my life and just try to keep my head up and be positive and be a good role model, to be an inspiration and just be a good person and just be the best who it could be. So that's it. Thank you.
So I just wanted to open with a memory from my grad school that I had Osman for my critique session, and then I remember that after that we had this great conversation that I never forget. And he told me that, look, the world is filled with all this negative news about immigrants and Muslims and all these people, and we as artists have the responsibility not to add to that. So it stuck with me, and he saved me from just repeating myself and creating work that is being seen and is part of like the cliche. So I thank you for that. It's still stuck with me, and I always listen to that and remind myself about whenever I want to feel like, okay, my work is about immigration and about borders, and this is how usually people want to see you and box you and label you. There are so many preconceived notions about like immigrations and being a Muslim, or even coming like being an Iranian, there are very stereotypical imagery and like a series of beliefs around that. But my lesson in doing work about my experiences as an Iranian immigrant was to create work based on my own experiences, but make it more like a universal and make it more relatable for other people, and invite a more broad audience to, hey, these feelings and experiences are universal. We all go through loss and distance and borders, and all of those things. So I start based on my, community experiences, my personal experiences, but I always try to leave the door a little more open, for people to also take something, and have a piece in it, for the audience to find a piece in it that, oh, I can relate to this part and that part. So that's that.
I think it's tricky. I mean, let's see. I reverted to Islam around the same time, 2005. I was in college and grew up Catholic. Went to Catholic school for 9 years. Found so many, and then sort of, went to public school. And my parents weren't really religious, but they wanted to send me to have a good education, so they sent me to this Catholic school in Ann Arbor. But we weren't practicing family. It wasn't like, again, looking at my glasses. It wasn't something that, in high school I kind of stopped. I focused more on music and school. It just, the foundation was built for me, but it wasn't sort of because of going to Catholic school, but it wasn't necessarily in the family in terms of something that I think maybe that would have kept me there. But I think, having this religious upbringing brought me closer to the idea of converting to Islam. I read the Quran and fasted. I had a lot of Muslim friends in college too. And so, seeing these other communities that I wasn't exposed to in high school or grade school, being in Catholic school, there weren't a lot of Muslims in Catholic school, but, so it felt really natural, and it wasn't something that I considered to then really, it was such a new thing for me at that time in undergrad. And also when you're an undergrad, you're testing on a lot of different approaches and mediums and trying to find your own voice, and that takes years to figure out too, and still figure out. But it wasn't like a conversation that I felt like, okay, now I'm Muslim, I have to figure out how to make work about that identity, because I was figuring it out as new to me. And I think until even in grad school, 6 years later when I was in school getting my master's, that wasn't necessarily also part of the conversation for some reason. It was, I kind of navigated, I had a fellow student say, you don't look Muslim, so why, it's a really weird place for me to be in, because I'm navigating something new, and my wife is Pakistani and has a huge family, and so I'm 3/4 involved in my daily life is involved in that family, and it feels very comfortable, but then it's I'm walking on the street and I don't know, until recently I started to make these little subtle suggestions, and I think it was just about time. The pieces downstairs are specifically sized 1-to-1 to a paragraph, like a janimaz. And so the ratio of the piece itself on the wall is the same size as a paragraph, because it's an object that, after 10 years, 13 years, it's this daily thing that I'm involved with. And then I started to warm up to this idea of, if I'm pulling imagery from family that I grew up with and archives of places I've been and images that I feel attached to, or I'm responding to, why can't I start pulling imagery from the surroundings that I'm currently in? And so I started downstairs. There's these little remnants of prayer book samples that I then either paint or screen print. It's sort of document. This process of documenting and then reprinting happens a lot in the work through various mediums. But I think I'm starting to. The other thing is appropriation. It's like being in this space where I'm surrounded happily, right, by like this new it sounds weird, new colors and textures and new things that I interact with on a daily basis, specifically parallels and Shalvarkamis, and then you get attached to some of these things that it has a tactile feel and you feel really connected with it. You're wearing it on certain occasions that are exciting, and then I'm trying to introduce that into the work, and so. But then as like a white guy, it feels like, am I appropriating another culture, even though it's a big part of my family, my in-laws, and so that's kind of where I'm navigating. But yeah, I think, and then being in the art world too, last year I almost had both sides of the spectrum. Larry Osei-Mensah is an amazing curator. He put me in this great show championing the fact that he's like, hey, can I write about you being Muslim? Like, can I position that as like part of the, context of the show? Because there's other, it fit. And that was the first time that, it was sort of presented and it felt good because there was just this other part of me that I, wasn't outwardly showing my friends and family and stuff. And it's a huge issue. It was for a while a huge issue in my family. So there was always this hesitation because of, family issues where I wouldn't see relatives for years because of converting to Islam. So it's been this sort of sensitive. I think that's maybe why it's been a sensitive thing is. But anyways, but then also on the other end, having a show in wherever and finding out the reason it didn't go so well is it's too Muslim. Like getting those two ends of the spectrum where it's like art, the gallery world where it's like, it messed with me a lot last year. And so, that creates a lot of hesitation and doubt and frustration because your intentions are to create a broader conversation that's very inclusive and has, in the work, it has all these bits and moments that I think people could jump into in various points. But then to hear sort of both ends of that sword, it leaves you in a weird space. And I think that's also another reason why I took some time off was to really get comfortable with certain ideas and to just go forward with it. But so, the Muslimness, it's, it's hard to navigate. I don't know. Without being pigeonholed into a certain category or a certain style or with my wife's also a painter, and so for her it was also she's first generation Pakistani American, and it's like does she for a long time people saying do Mughal miniatures, but there's a whole other conversation that has that could be had. So those have been the things that we've kind of stayed away from, but I think as time goes it'll make a bigger mark.
I'd just like to add something. I actually choose to wear my headscarf, so I wear it every day. And this one time at the dance studio, one of the moms asked the owner if to tell me to take off my headscarf because it scares her child. Yeah. And she was taken aback, I was taken aback. And she's like, no, like this is what I wear and I just wear it. I just hope that parents and just whoever you are as an adult and as a guardian to just please, if you can, just teach your children that there are different people out there that dress different, that that follows different religions, have different cultures, because there was I felt bad that she was supposedly, I don't know, it was really the daughter, to be honest with you, because she was only 3 years old and she seemed like she had fun in my class. So, but that was really taken aback from that. And my studio's in Birmingham, next at Broadway, and so I've been the manager there for over 9 years, and so it's predominantly, it is a white neighborhood, but a lot of people have hopefully grown to enjoy my company as like the face of the studio, and as for me to be an Asian Muslim B girl who runs a studio in Birmingham, I think it's pretty cool, But yeah, I'd like to just add that it's just an experience, It's just it was really weird and taken back from it.
Great, thank you for that. Kind of following up on that, but from maybe a different angle is, one thing that's emerging from what we're calling the halal metropolis is novel hybrid vernaculism, which is combining traditions from various homelands within and with American culture to produce new visual aesthetics and linguistic forms. For example, we remember Biden saying inshallah. That's where he's getting that from the Muslim tradition, right? But what's kind of unique here is the Muslim American is now creating its own identity that might be separate from our homelands or even certain indigenous. There's something new maybe brewing. And I'm kind of curious on how that's affecting you guys by being in this area as artists. Some of you coming from a different homeland, but in a way, we're all adding to this new Muslim American identity that is no longer connected maybe to the homeland. I'm just curious, how does it affect does it affect you being in this area? And there's certain things are emerging here that are of interest, or how do you think of that sort of emerging kind of identity, which has aesthetics as part of it, right?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm trying to go back to understand. What's that?
That music.
Not my best. So my parents, my dad's side came from Italy, and his whole upbringing was assimilated. He was first generation. This was in the 40s, 50s, and my grandparents spoke Italian, and my great grandmother only spoke Italian. But I didn't get that sort of experience because as my father grew up, he was first generation here. He was assimilating to American culture and didn't speak. The language wasn't passed down. The traditions weren't passed down as much. We still had them, but it's an interesting structure because then when my grandfather passed, the whole family sort of just disappeared in a sense. There's always that one member that sort of holds things together in large families, maybe. My wife's family is Pakistani. She's first generation Pakistani American, and so. But I've noticed that she's more. Her generation's more about celebrating the culture, right? So this older generation seems to be about assimilating. The newer one seems to be celebrating and uplifting and creating new spaces to pass on some of those old traditions, but in a new way, in a new light and a new energy. And so, I've always sort of felt this in-between space where I haven't figured out necessarily where I stand. I never stood firmly in one space. I always felt comfortable in other spaces, other communities. And so right now, being Muslim and having a large Muslim family, 40 cousins on the weekend kind of thing. It feels like it's creating a new vernacular and the way that I'm trying to pull, all of these different images from various sources that's tapping into some of that language as well, it can be very literal from prayer rugs and this kind of thing, but or garments and shalwar kameez and stuff, but honing in and sort of sampling and then creating another language that doesn't exist in my own language that I grew up with, or it's just something new. I'm more of like a visual language, I guess, but that hybrid space is nice, you know. And, you know, and now my kid's like 3 years old and she's half Pakistani and like whatever, or three, I don't know how it breaks down because I'm half Italian and Scottish and English, but anyways, it gets interesting, yeah.
You could go.
My homeland is Iran, which Islam became the official religion since 1979. So, I'm sorry, what?
Can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I do want to speak louder. So, I said my homeland is Iran, which Islam became the official religion since after 1979 Islamic Revolution. So when I was in Iran, so I was surrounded by like-minded, not like-minded, but like practice, like religious, people. And the only thing that I knew is that we are a Muslim country, and some of the neighboring countries were also Muslim. But I didn't know much about like other Muslims in other countries and around the world, which when I was introduced to Halal Metropolis, I was amazed by the diversity of the Muslim community here in the US and also even in Detroit, and the Muslimness of their work, and how, what is the approach that they're taking in their work? Is it more of a direct approach? Is it something that they've seen and they are comfortable with those types of imagery, as you mentioned, like the Mughal, yes, like those are things that people are comfortable with and they knew it. So I think that it's really hard to challenge people's, ideas about things, especially as the world is becoming more and more hybrid. So I think that for me, seeing other Muslims artists' work inspired me a lot. Say that Islam and being Muslim is not only one thing, it's just how you can kind of juggle, between all these different things that you can take from these different things that you have grown up with, and also like the culture around you, and also all these different people that are still practicing Islam, but they're coming from different places in life and with different ethnicities and background. I think that's very inspiring, that there's not only one way of creating work, because I've been to many exhibitions that the title is like artwork by Islam, like Muslim artists or Islamic art, and you're expected to see all this Arabic calligraphy and all these geometric shapes, and that's all everyone knows about, like Islamic art and Islamic artwork, but there's much more than that. So I think this hybrid, community and platform enables all the Muslim artists in this community in Detroit, and hopefully in a broader spectrum, to just try to find ways that they can merge their culture, their religion with something that is novel and still meaningful and inspiring.
So the one thing that when I was looking, when I converted, was that when you convert to Islam or revert to Islam, is that you come as you are, and I'm Cambodian and everything like that. So I always for the cultures, I haven't abandoned some of what we celebrate. Like we still celebrate Cambodian New Year's. We still celebrate. I still celebrate Pachoon Min, which is you celebrate your ancestors basically. I still do that with my family, and then going back to trying to merge of who I am as an artist. I think my music video kind of sums it up a little bit. I try to just remember who I am in every aspect. Like in that video, I really want to portray that. When I say Cambodian, it's the same thing as a Khmer. So in that video, I'm wearing a Cambodian traditional Aspara outfit, and I really want to like show that side of the Cambodian traditional wear and costuming in that. And then also I wear my hip hop gear with my Cambodian snap cap to like, hey, I am also a B girl too. And then I try not to bring up BTS, but I bring up BTS. And I absolutely love BTS. I love them so much, and in my video I have their Dynamite cap on there because they really inspire me as an Asian artist. And for them to be so successful, I really wanted to acknowledge that they helped me be I'm so sorry. William is probably like, oh my gosh, here she goes. I'm like really happy that like he put them in my life because I really was not like confident in myself, and I like felt really bad because I always tell my kids like to be brave and to be all that, right? To be all they could be. And then, you know, usually it's always easier said than done, but when I'm watching them be very strong on stage, how they perform, their positive messaging, like it helped me like put out my song. I was like, if they could represent themselves as Korean Asian artists, I could represent myself as a Cambodian Muslim B girl, and this really show people who I am, you know. And it made me really happy that I actually produced my first song and wrote my lyrics, and I'm so happy. And then I'm trying to get my second single done by tonight, so there's like 3 small parts in there, but I'm just like listening to it and adjusting all my equalizing and all that stuff. But going back to the question is, I just want to just be myself, you know, going back to like finding who you are. And in my song too, like I decided I am not a rapper, but I say I'm a lyricist. I rap in Cambodian in my song because I just feel like I just wanted to really portray who I am, just to merge like who I am as a person and as an artist. And like I said, I want to choose what I share to the world, you know. So I think as artists, it feels very liberating that we could have that expression, like, this is what I choose today. This is what I choose to say. This is what I choose to see. It's kind of like social media, right? You only choose what you want to show to the world, but it's like, and everything else is this, you know, my husband knows me the best, you know, at home. But it's like, but this is who I am. Anyway, thank you. Sorry. And no, I shouldn't apologize. I shouldn't apologize.
Can I make one more comment? Sorry. I mean, just when you're able to like inspire others too, that's like so special. When we moved, my wife and I moved back to Detroit. We were on the East Coast for the last 10 years. We moved to Hamtramck, and it's such a diverse Muslim population in Hamtramck as well. And at the time, she got invited. One of our friends was teaching an art class at Hamtramck High School. I think it was like fresh. It was the high school students, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to go? You know, be a guest lecturer and just introduce your practice to these students? It's sort of an art appreciation class." And she had, you know, she went in and she did her spiel and she showed the work that she was making, and she was telling me, she's like, you know, there were girls that were in tears because they didn't know that women could be artists, and that language that she was showing the audience, they understood that language and they could see it, and they knew where the ads were coming from, and they knew, you know, the Urdu script, or you know, they're having debates about it. It sort of energized that classroom and a younger generation, first generations too, immigrants that came, and it's all whole new setting. Hamtramck is this weird landing ground too. Like I found out that my uncle, that was his first stop from Italy, was Hamtramck, and then they eventually went into Detroit and Warren. But there's so much, it's exciting when there's room for creating this community that, you know, is underrepresented. You know, Muslim artists, there's amazing Muslim artists out there, but it's underrepresented, and it's you're enabling a whole other generation, right, through your work and your practice and your ideas, and that's at its core like so valuable. Yeah.
So, for those who haven't seen the show, but for those who have, you'll see their works on one level are extremely different. But one thing they do share is the depiction of body. And I'm kind of curious about that, especially considering some Muslim traditions where the body is a no-no, and that's why, let's say in traditional Islamic art, you see more geometries. This has to do with kind of projection of the image being worshipped or something. We're far ways away from that, but I'm just more curious, as an artist, how are you dealing with body, be it as a dancer and a priest? This time you work with a dancer to think through that. But the second, why depict it, and where does the body come in? Anthony, you chop it up often, so in collage it. So just curious on that type of representing the body. It doesn't have to do with Islam and Muslimness, but how do you approach body and its representation in your work?
I think with the pieces downstairs, part of my intention for the 1-to-1 ratio of the prayer rug, determining the size, was both objects require this like suspension of disbelief for a second. Right? Looking at a painting, you know, praying on a janimaz, you know, it's an act that requires you to put yourself on the back seat, you know, your ego, and just be fully immersed by that experience. And so that was maybe, you know, the framework for why that, and it might continue. And it seems religious to say like the prayer rug, and then there's imagery all over it, right? It's like a double no-no. But that's not the function of that object on the wall. I think in terms of the figurative language that I'm using, and I'm interested in this like residue from images, psychological, emotional, the proxemics, even the haptics, like body language, like handshakes or mouth movement, and sort of what that tension and the cropped image creates in certain spaces in proximity to one another. The commonalities between maybe totally disparate like subject matters, you know, pulled from different images, but then collectively placed next to one another. I'm interested in that tension, and for it to sort of, this idea that, you know, verbal cues are a certain type of grammar that can even create, you know, a type of communication, not spoken, but a type of verbal communication. I'm not verbal, sorry. You know, within imagery, or a language, it creates a certain type of visual language, sorry. And so that's sort of the drive between, that guides me for cropping and selecting images and groupings. And it's also the curiosity of collecting and the impulse and sort of that like feverish, you know, archiving. And I've been influenced by, you know, other artists that, like Gerhard Richter's Atlas is just like, I'm interested in the structure and then breaking it all apart. Some of the paintings downstairs I would consider the most chaotic ones, right? They're not planned at all. It's sort of one image is placed, and then it creates these problems that I have to then respond to visually, and that eventually over, you know, they're not necessarily collage, but they're stenciled in acrylic, and then I'm screen printing, and then I'm using all these different materials and transfers, and so it has a collage aesthetic, but it's built up over time. It's built up over, you know, 200 images, or the previous show with the diptych that had the two yellow pieces. It was like cell by cell. I would make the format, like make the cell and then print the image and then respond to that. So that's the way I'm sort of navigating, you know, and the whole composition could change with the placement of one image, or it could, at times it also actually then just produces problems. It's sort of, how do you then remove that image? A lot of the imagery underneath those paintings are my reaction to this doesn't feel right, or this doesn't flow, or there's not a guided principle or organization. And so the editing and basically how I see painting is sort of a series of obstructions over and over and over, you know, until it gets to the point where you're not able to navigate it yourself, or it just sort of it creates its own voice and creates its own presence that you are then witnessing versus the act of, you know, brushing and painting. In the early stages, it feels very self-guided, but then at the end of the work, you know, when it reaches that point, it feels very, you're removed from the whole experience of it. You're more of a witness to it, but.
I think that in all of my work, since I started my fine art practice and kind of not just segue from being a pure graphic designer, and it was like human body and like just human had a huge presence in my work, and I think I'm fascinated by people. I love people. And I love meeting new people, making new friends. I think that's always been my subject of fascination. But the other thing is that, especially for this piece, I think the idea of who gets to decide what makes us and them. Like, who draws the line? What happens if my feet stay on one side of the line, but my hands are reaching and hugging the person on the other side of? Like, our body relation to the space, to each other, to the border, to all the things, or even to the authority, you know? Like, when you're asked at the airport that, oh, sorry, it's been a random, you know, selection, and you have to go through like more investigations. What does that randomness mean? What are the things that you don't have any control over, like your place of birth, your religion, you know, your name, or where you're coming from, and all of those is just felt so interesting to me, because I was myself subject of most of these experiences that I shared with you all. So I just wanted to I thought that performance is the best shape for it, because I was also fascinated by how my dancers were moving, interacting, how they were seeing the border, you know, and also personify the border, you know, because sometimes we feel that there's a human presence. It's not just the line, you know, but it has that power that it kind of reminds us that maybe it has the same power and authority like an officer, you know, or a border patrol, you know, something like that, that we totally forget that this is just a line, you know, it can be here, but who gets to decide that? It's a person. So I was trying to create and personify that barrier, and making it like to shaped as a human body and as a human barrier. So I was more interested in our human gestures, and as I said, like you have hugging, reaching out, you know, pulling away, all those different interactions with each other, with the space, and to what restricts us, you know, because they're starting taping her and, you know, restricting her and invading her space, you know, and how does she respond to that, you know, so all of those things.
I love dancing, and I've been dancing for a very, very long time, and what I love about it, like I said before, was the expression, for self-expression and everything like that, as well as exercise. But it's specifically in my music video, I do Cambodian traditional dance. So I do, I'm gonna put down the microphone. So it's like very elegant and slow, and it is to the music, and there's like different things that you could do with your fingers to like represent the tree and the flower blossoming, and like growing. So there's like a lot of like different like kind of sign language within the dance. So I wanted to like show a little bit of that in like my music video to, because I grew up dancing like that at the New Year's in the Cambodian men. And then also with dance, it's like you could tell a story with your body, which is like, especially when I'm because I dance in like so many different ways. Like I perform, I battle as a B-girl. When I battle as a B-girl, I want to be aggressive, and while I want to one up the opponent, I actually want to actually be my best. But when you watch the person on the floor and you want to like try to beat what they did on the floor and be aggressive, when you come up, you do the B-boy stance, the B-girl stance, which represents the confidence. So it's like you'd be like that. You could be like this. This is like, you've probably seen this before. That comes from the B-boy swag, from the B-boy culture, from hip hop. You know, you could be up like that, you could be like this, whatever. You always want to finish off with that because it shows the confidence. So when you're done, when you're finishing your dance moves and you come up, you just come up like this and just walk out. But when you come up like this, no matter what you did, if you just flopped around the floor and you come up like that, is that could be really believable. Or if you did like something like this, you know, like somebody's like, wait a second. So did she not do good or did she do good? So it's really how you want to represent yourself. How do you want to represent yourself on the floor? So that's me as a B girl, showed you me as a Cambodian. And then, you know, yes, Muslim people, some of us go to the dance clubs, you know, especially I'm a B girl, I love dancing, I love house music. We do listen to music. So when I'm out and I haven't gone out as much because of COVID, but I'm like a total wallflower. I just like listen to the music and just go with it, and I just, whatever the beat is going through my body, I just like interpret the music with my body and just have fun and just dance. But don't watch me. That's when you don't watch me. But when I'm on the stage, please watch me. I'm a very homebody. When you were saying like you like to meet new people and stuff like that, I was like, I like to be home because I'm like an introvert. I was like, oh, I just want to go out. Like, my husband would be like, you want to go out? And I'd be like, can I watch my K-dramas? But anyways, going back, I just went on a tangent. The body is just, you know, I just want to represent myself. I interpret the music. It's a form of self-expression, a form of exercise, a form of art, like my choreography. My first piece that was at the Halal Metropolis was a dance theater piece, 6 minutes long. I'm on stage and I actually go through my family's journey escaping Cambodia to come here. So with that piece, it was just very emotional. Even though I didn't live it, my family has told me many, many, many stories of what happened, how they got here. And so I wanted to express that with that piece. And it was just, there's one part where I just, something is attacking me and I'm like really screaming at that part and just showing like the resilience that I have of walking in my journey. So just to show that to people too. So, you know, you could do a lot of things with your body. And obviously I always wanted to be respectful and to represent myself well. And another thing too, like for me, that's very important. When I teach hip hop at the studio, I teach hip hop. I don't teach the girls twerking or shaking their hips and, you know, maybe a little bit of hips, but no twerking. I had some families that said, your hip hop is not urban enough. And I was like, what does that mean? What do you mean not urban enough? Like, I'm actually teaching them this is a real hip hop. I'm not even exaggerating though, because breaking or b-boying, b-girling, that is the most authentic hip hop dance there is breaking. It's one of the elements of hip hop, if you guys didn't know that. So it's like I'm teaching the most foundation part of hip hop history, which is breaking. and all the party dances come later. It's like social dancing. It's like so much with the body that you could do with dance. So I really try to teach my kids that you could dance without being that way. You could dance and be strong and represent yourself well without having to be suggestive at all, and nothing against people who do choose to be that way, because each their own, and I respect everybody of their decision and everything like that. So yeah, I'm very, very passionate about hip hop dance and dance and all that stuff. Okay.
Thank you all. I think I'll open it up to the audience now for any questions from the audience to our artists here.
I have a question. So I know you all talked in the beginning about the pieces that you had in the exhibit, but I guess my question is, how do you choose what specific piece to bring to an exhibit? Like, what is the decision-making process? Is it because there's something, it's like there's a certain cultural conversation that's happening and you're like, oh, I have a piece that can speak to it? Is it because, you're just in, this was something you just finished and you're like, this is my newest work of art and this is why I want to show off? Do you recycle pieces? How do you make that decision?
I'm sorry for that, and for me, this was very significant for me with my music video because it just came out and they asked me if I had anything new, and that was the newest thing that I came out with, and I was so happy to share that with the Halal Metropolis, and thank you so much that you guys asked me for another piece. I was very honored of that. Then also, I'm hoping to actually recreate my first piece. You inspired me to recreate my first piece because my first piece that was here at Halal Metropolis, it was a dress rehearsal recording of what we did at, was it the Footsteps in the Dark? Footsteps in the Dark. You guys inspired me to make a actual video, an actual performance dance theater video of it, and not just a faraway camera that's, so that, so hopefully that will come within, the next year or so. Yeah, so that,
I think that for me was, I finished the piece, I think about 10 days before the opening because it took me, as I mentioned before, 2 years to gather my team and secure the funding. So that was a slow process. But in previous Halal exhibitions, I exhibited a totally different body of work. They were digital photographs still. The same idea of home and being an alien and immigrant, but for this one I thought that although it doesn't look like immigrant and Muslim enough in a very direct way, but the underlying message is how your religion can stop you and restrict you, so I thought that fits well with the theme of the exhibition and with the mission of this Halal Metropolis, and I think that, and I really wanted to put it out there and see how people respond to it, how if there's a piece for them that they can hook and see themselves and relate to that, because for me it was always, randomness about the religion and where you're from. It's just so frustrating, and I thought that that also it's another aspect of, just being a Muslim. It's not that, all those cliche things, but all these other things that it's brought with it as an aftermath, all these political things that are attached to it. And I wanted to highlight that. So that's why I chose this piece. So I hope I answered your question as well.
I think with my work, there's been last 10 years a certain trajectory and content and like I have a kind of path that I'm going, a conversation I'm having with the work that, you can either sometimes, I think a lot depends on if it fits the context of the show, the curator's intention, what the show is about, what are the other artists, that are working in the show. And a lot of times, or you can also make site-specific work too. I think for this show, I was working on, when I moved back to Detroit, I started this idea of tabletop still life paintings. And it was really just like unpacking my studio boxes on a table. And when I was in New York and in grad school and stuff, like I was working on something sort of completely different, but this unpacking really fueled the last like 6 years of work. And so that it's sort of like these little pivots where, I didn't really show a lot after when I was in New York, and I think if you try to chase the shows, or there's sometimes it feels like artists will make work specifically for a show based on the content, and it kind of deviates from their practice just to get into the show, or I think with my own practice, it's sort of just been this investigation that over time built up into a massive sort of body of work, where you can then, have us one can come by and we can figure out which pieces work for the show or how it fits into the other conversations that the other artists are having. And, but that's important. But I think everyone works differently, and I think part of who influences you too as an artist. I like this idea of really mining something until it's exhausted, and then it puts you in a position of, well, how do they then respond to them? Where do you go from there? And that can create entirely new bodies of work that, at one point I feel like I had 3 bodies of work going on at the same time, and it was really confusing. It was these really chaotic pieces that were the tabletop still lifes, and then these grid pieces, and I think with Along Metropolis we showed a couple different versions of them. And then it's interesting to be in a space where, how do you know where to navigate from there? Do you go down this one path? Does that become your brand? Or your language? Is it very serial format? Or I've always kind of liked these idea of obstructions, and so the shows hopefully they follow the work, but it's really this concentrated time in the studio where you're really just, you've got your blinders on, and if the shows come, that's great, but the conversation you're having is really important for yourself.
So I just wanted to add to that as one of the curators, and partly why we've also made, this is a kind of unusual show in that there's a historic section, a kind of contemporary documentary area. We're sitting on a very contemporary Yemeni furniture, and then the artist expressions, which was one of the greatest experiences for me, because there are just so many different aesthetics and non-typical aesthetics going on here, which really maybe this kind of has that Orientalist sort of vibe to it, but a lot of the artists are not working that way. They've gone beyond it, dealing with concerns that are true for immigrants or for Muslims, of course to all humans, but expressed in very different ways. And partly I think I felt a responsibility to show that. I could have chosen work that you could have pinpointed very easily that, oh, that's very Muslim looking or Orientalist looking. One could have. There are artists working in that tradition. But a lot of the contemporary artists that we are all, our community is not. It's actually trying to break away. Going back to that new hybridity that everyone sort of brought up, we're trying to break those norms a little bit as well. So, and that's what I sort of see, and hopefully when you go downstairs, you'll see the community itself is still grappling with it. There's still a lot of homeland to be found in the bigger community. But I think the artists, who are always the avant-garde, are always exploring kind of ahead of that. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, we'll take the next question. Absolutely.
I was curious, in the sense of generationally speaking of yourself as artists who are Muslim as opposed to Muslim artists, is there a difference between generationally where you're expressing yourself, or is it the result of the generational experience you're having from that the way your parents had? Is there a different outlet that you're taking it's not just the medium, is it the different sense of being an immigrant in America? That you're in other words, what I'm trying to say is, are you trying to channel a new sense of what it's like?
Well, hopefully I could answer for myself. So my family, so when they escaped, they came here to America, and I was born in Detroit in '82. And when they came, they were sponsored by a Catholic church in St. Clair Shores. So when they were sponsored, they learned all of the Christmas traditions, the Easter traditions, and all that stuff. And thought it was the American way. That's what all Americans do. We thought, my family thought to assimilate, okay, so we're gonna do this too. And when I get older, it's oh, wait a second. And when I go to high school and everything, I went to a predominantly white high school, and it used to be called East Detroit High School. It's not called East Point. There was not a lot of us there, a lot of people of color. So I didn't really know about a lot of other things really until I got into hip hop. Hip hop, there's so many different people in hip hop. It's amazing. It's I remember, I know I'm going off the tangent a little bit, but we would go to Canada a lot, and we would get stopped all the time because you see an Asian girl, my husband's black, you see a couple white people in the car, they always pull us over, why are this, what do we call it, honey? What do we call ourselves? We call ourselves something because we're all different, United Nations or something like that, because we're all different and we get pulled over a lot. Just because I think that's, why would all these different people be hanging out with each other? But growing, and then going back to my growing up, it was this really, really traditional with my family. My family were not happy. When I first converted, my sister was like, did you see what those Muslim men in the Middle East do to their wives? They're evil. Why would you want to go into something like that? And I said, first of all, why are you getting your information from CNN and the news and everything like that? This researcher stuff, it was really heated. My extended family, my dad's cousins, every time I go to just to sit in on a Buddhist ceremony, they're you need to take their headscarf off. That is very disrespectful to the religion, and I'm but first of all, I'm not Buddhist, and second of all, I'm Gong Cham. In Cambodia, there's actually a Muslim population called the Cham Cambodians, Khmer Chams, and I just say that I'm part of that. So every time my family would be, just underhanding, saying something, my extended family is saying something, I'm Gong Cham, I'm part of that, part of that Cambodian community. It's not easy all the time, right? And then also, just growing up, it's very traditional. It was expected to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. A lot of that stuff is true with Asian families. They really want them to be those three things. And I didn't want me to I want to be a dancer and a singer, a performing artist. That is how am I going to eat? How are you going to make it out there? But hey, I'm living proof because 100% of what I make comes from the performing arts, because that's what I do, is that I run a performing arts studio. And I sing and dance and I perform and do all that stuff. But I'm a total black sheep though. I feel like I'm a total black sheep because I'm just so different from everybody else in my family, but at the same time, I do feel like I'm the normal one, if that makes sense. Because I want to like actually go for my dream, you know? I feel really very bad for like those, you know, in my family or my friends that they're not going to for what they really love, you know. And I just want to show my parents that their American dream is more than what they think, you know. And I'm hoping that I am living that right now. Yeah.
Like you found what you versus what your parents thought they needed to feel grounded immigrating to the U.S. I mean, I feel like that's also like those conversations are happening now. Like I keep going back to my wife, who's also an artist, and she's shown her work's downstairs too. But that same conversation, you know, and the same story, you know, it's her parents immigrated from Pakistan with $5 in their pocket, and they've sacrificed so much, and so why would you go down the arts? How are you going to feed yourself? How are you going to have a family? Yada yada yada. You know, but when you say like you feel like you're sort of the most grounded one sometimes, you know, or happy, that's the exchange of your time and how it affects your life outwardly. And I think other people then start to see that hopefully in time. But it is also really hard reverting, you know, I don't know, similar experiences where it's years of not seeing half of your family or something, you know, it becomes, but if you can get, Allah gives you those challenges, it's a sign that, you know, you're in His grace kind of thing, right? And
Yeah.
it's a really nice way of trying to push yourself through those moments. But I think with your question, you know, I grew up surrounded by like making, like my grandparents were all, my grandfather was a cabinet maker. He had a studio in his garage. He was auto plant assembly worker too, and metalsmith and stuff. Making with the hands and this tradition of, and then my grandmother making, you know, winning awards in her community for ceramics, you know, religious figures and musicians, uncles that were, you know, captured in World War II and played violin. It's these stories that you grew up with, and then you have all this fodder almost. Like you have this energy sometimes. I mean, this is how I kind of experienced it was, then what do I do with that? How do I kind of create my own path? And so, you know, the expectations of becoming a doctor, lawyer, whatever, you know, engineer, those amazing fields, but I never had that language. I could never understand it. I was doing so poorly in undergrad until I switched to studio art. And yeah, I could be like, oh, well, it's just a painting class. But that language, I really put my energy into and owned it, you know. And you know, I was a poli-sci major. My mom wanted me to be a lawyer. I went into history, and it was to try, and it was quiet in the department, and then education. And then my advisor was like, why would you go into studio art? It's a dead-end career. You're not going to make any money. I was like, this sounds perfect. Like, but those experiences, because of that decision, it gave me my own trajectory. And I was fortunate enough to live up, you know, coming from East Lansing for my undergrad, and then going, because of switching majors, then going to Berlin to live for 2 years to work for an artist, and then going to it's really exciting when those things start to line up. And if I had gone on any other field, you know, I wouldn't have used all of the knowledge before, you know, like growing up, my mom was like, all right, you need to get a worker's permit. Your uncle is manager at a paint store, go work at the paint store. So I was mixing paint for like 5 years, you know, but that's part of it. That's the fabric of like, that's why I feel like so comfortable with painting or something. It's the material, and it feels like something I'm connected to, which is it's so cheesy, but those are like the poetics or something, you know, where you keep coming back to it because you've spent so much time, you know, investing in being surrounded by those mediums and outlets and communities, and but I don't know, I hope that answers somewhat your question. It's tricky.
I don't know if I can contribute much because none of my family members emigrated with me. So I didn't experience that clash of cultures and religion, all of those. But I can speak about the art world, which I could see that in the older generation, how their artwork, like the Iranian artists and those who immigrated right after the revolution, how their work was so heavily impacted by all the, the upheavals of the time, the revolution and the war, all of those, and how they were trying to reflect that in their artwork, and how their artwork was so black and white and so biased, and I don't want to name them, but it's just some of them are kind of the icons of Iranian and Islamic, type of word. And everyone, when they find out that I'm from Iran, like, do you know this so-and-so? And it's like, yes, but she or he are not the only Iranian artists who represent, the Iranian art world or the Islamic art, That's why I always try to be proud of who I am, but at the same time, just see more grays, it's not, the word is not black and white, people are not black and white, so I just keep training myself and try to also reinforce that in my art practice to see all those shades of gray, and I think that's also what the newer generation of Iranian artists or artists from Islamic countries are doing, when I curated a show of contemporary women artists from Iran. I brought like all these original artworks of these 1980s generation of women artists, and people were amazed by it because they said, "Oh, they're not wearing hijab." We thought that Iranian women are so oppressed and suppressed, and and they're all either wearing these hijabs and like their husbands are wife beaters, all of those things. But they were seeing colors and women that are free and liberated, and they were like women here or women everywhere else, So I can talk about that generational gap in the art world, but unfortunately I don't have that family, experience. I hope that I answered your question as well.
Any other? Please.
I was wondering how your more unconventional type of art, in terms of like Islamic type of it, Islamic side of it, like a dance, for instance, and hip hop dance is not a very well-known type of dance in like more conservative Islamic countries. It's not like being practiced there for a long time or something. It's pretty new. And I don't know about your work, how Islamically unconventional you have gone, how far you've gone. But I just wanted to, because I got your stories from this side, like how white community is receiving it. But I'm also interested in seeing how that side, like more Islamic side or more conservative side, is receiving your art. Did you have any audience? Did you like have any type of interaction with those?
Yes. So when I toured in Malaysia, and Malaysia is like 96% Muslim country, like they say Muslim country. My really good friend in Mama Squared, Amira Sackett, we actually toured together there, and they actually was trying to get her. This was 2018. They actually wanted to get her like in 2013, but they were not ready to see female dancers. They were not ready at that time, and this is 2013. And so finally in 2018, we were able to go. And it was really successful. It was a really receptive and everything like that. I was a little bit little nervous But on the first night there, we ciphered. So a cipher is a dance circle at a taxi stand with b-boys, with Malaysian b-boys, and it was. And then people walking by, nobody's really in Kuala Lumpur. Nobody's like giving us any issues and anything because we were females dancing, you know, and it felt really awesome, you know, to cipher with fellow dancers, you know, like we're equal, you know, just because I'm a girl, like I want to dance too, you know. And then also we went to the colleges and everything like that. And there was some, I think in Kotubora, I don't know what city or college it was, but they only allowed girls in that classroom and female teachers. There were more conservative areas than others. So that was more conservative area, but that was pretty, it was understandable, I understood, you know, I thought it was fine. And then they asked us questions about like, you know, it's amazing how many people want to come here to America. But I was telling them like, when I was there, I loved it. Like it was so easy to be Muslim there because it was a Muslim majority country. They had, you could pray at the gas station, at the airport. They had Muslim everywhere. Like you could pray. It was so easy. And I was telling them like, if you go to America, it's not that easy. Just to like, okay, it's time to pray. Let's go pray. You know, like we try to find like the cleanest spot or do it in our car or something. Like try to pray as how we can. You know, I was just telling them like, gosh, it's so easy here. Why would you guys want to go to America? You know what I mean? And then, so yeah, they were. It was just very awesome to be there. And then also, I feel like as a B girl, I feel like the Muslims who are Black understand about me wanting to dance in hip hop because, you know, Black people created hip hop. So I just feel like they totally understand that outlet of creativity through dance. And I feel like I'm more accepted in that community than so because when I first converted, it was very hard for girls even here in America to understand, like, I don't understand how you're allowed to dance, you know, and I'm just like, well, this is a form of self-expression, you know, it's, you know, I'm not out there doing, you know, but like I said, nothing they do them, I do me, you know, I do me, they do them, it's whatever. But yeah, that's my experiences, my personal experiences though, as a B girl and as a girl who dances, you know, or a girl who's so many labels. It's just like, I'm just married.
I think two things I can share. One, sort of not as serious, and then the other is maybe more unfortunate, or interesting, like presents those problems. The first is, you know, when I married my wife Amna and came into her family, first artist in the family, huge, you know, 10 siblings on each side of her parents, lots of cousins, and when you enter a family like that, you know, lawyers, and so the first question is, well, can I see what's your work about, right? And so you share, and then you know, certain uncles then become like critiques, like that, right? And then they like interject, and you should be painting in oil, and it should be really representational. Well, look at this one, you know, like they'll go in and give you the, you know, and it's because it's such a new terrain also on that end, you know, for them to navigate. So they're giving their points of view and what they, you know, experienced. But it's interesting that it would, from family members that I've talked to about the work, there's this drive for realism, right? But in Islam and Islamic art, it's a lot of it's based on architecture or patterning, and the figure is pretty much void. or it is also that same conversation. Can you make a piece that's, questions like, can you make a piece that's, that goes like this and it's tiled and it, completely different trajectory than what I'm sort of interested in investigating in my studio practice. That's the other part of the conversation is the decorative aspect. But it's such a new terrain. My wife had a show at MoCAD recently, and the realization that she was the first person in her family to actually exhibit work in her community, right? Of all the people she knows, and growing up in Detroit and Michigan, and that was that moment, and that it was really special. It was until after the show that we kind of talked about that, and so there's that. But the other story is, the show with Larry Osei-Mensah curated. That it was the first time. It was. I was doing these tabletop still life paintings, and it was the first painting that I started to introduce the rug, the prayer rug. And it was printed a certain way, and I thought it was really beautiful, and it had this texture that I printed it in, similar to it's sort of this puff texture. Some of the pieces downstairs, it almost has this like basketball velvet texture to it, and it's just like an additive into the paint. But it kind of reminded me, if you put your fingers on the painting, it'll leave a mark. Similar to how a prayer rug, when you're praying, there's that residue of touch and movement, and you can see your knees and your hands and stuff on the rug. Anyways, it was the first piece that I had ever shown publicly, and I was really excited. It was an awesome gallery. I thought it was a big moment, and then it landed into a good collection. But then there was I got this call, and they're like, hey, we're gonna, from this collection, they're like, we're gonna do a tour. Like, we're gonna have all the artists from the show talk about their pieces. We'd love to have you come by. This was in New York. I was here at the time. And then a week later, they're like, you know what? Turns out it's actually it's a group of, and I don't know how to say this properly, but Jews from Israel. It's a group of, it's a group of them. Maybe we should just reschedule. I was like, you mean I can't have a conversation about what the work is about and like what I'm putting into it, and is it because I'm Muslim, or like, well, I just don't think it would really go over well with the group. So that was like the first, and the whole point was like to sort of, for me, for that piece specifically, I was trying to be vulnerable, trying to be like, okay, this is really important to me. It's been a part of my life. It's gotten me through hard times. Now I'm going to put it out there, and then there's resistance in the art world, unfortunately, and it's not the first time. It's a weird place to navigate. I think that's why this kind of exhibition and all the hard work, it's so important, because to have a conversation about the things that you're passionate about and you love and are part of your fabric. It's hard to. There's not a lot of opportunities, it feels like, especially for curators that are saying, who are the Muslim artists that are out there, that are non-Muslim, right? It doesn't really happen that much. But yeah, those are kind of the two. I'm not trying to
I don't know,
talk dirt.
but
It's a reality. Sorry.
I don't have any experience like Miri and Anthony, but I was thinking about the opposite of how my work, because here I started to kind of take away all these direct, symbols and icons and signs. I think that now my work has become this universal, that no one can kind of locate it and kind of see that it has this Iranian touch or Muslim touch to it, especially in my community. It's the opposite. They're trying to kind of find like, oh, is it really done by you? It's because they don't see those signs and traditional things. I think for me it had the opposite, effect. But and sometimes I feel like if I want to exhibit my work in Iran, how would they respond to it? Do they can they see themselves and part of their culture and religion in it, or is it too foreign for them? That's something that I haven't touched yet. but I'm trying to just hopefully in the future, if I can have an exhibition, I think have to seriously think about that, you know, that how I want my own community, my country of birth, you know, see me, and if I want them to see me the way that I've always been seen, or is it just the new me, you know, that as Mary pointed out, that it's just Parisa, you know, I don't care if I'm from this country or I'm from this religion, I'm just an artist, you know, I'm trying to talk about things that matters to me. So that's something that I think I have to have more critical thinking about when it's time. So not yet.
So we have time for maybe one last question, if anyone has a question. Otherwise. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to especially thank Mary, Parisa, Anthony. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. Learned so much more about your work, and of course, you guys have inspired me with this whole exhibition. And for those interested, and I hope you do see the full exhibition if you haven't, this is actually, sadly, the last Halal Metropolis physical exhibition that'll be happening, for at least the time being. We might want to revisit this in a couple of years and see where things are at. But so this is the final one. First of all, I want to thank Trina and the Skyrim Club for hosting it. Thank you so much for that. I want to thank everyone for coming. I also want to really thank our team, my co-curator, Sally Howell, Razi Joffrey, and the other great teammates, Asma Baban in the back, and Mojay here taking shots who don't get enough credit. So thank you all for making this possible. Thank you for making this possible, and thank you for appreciating it.